DC, Cal, what about the whole DC Marvel are going to come out according to Comics Pros? I guess that they're having right now. They're saying that they're going to come out with a new DC Marvel comic crossover. What's your take on that?
Well, the last time, I mean, the original crossovers we got with the Treasury size editions, I think Marvel and DC were both in a good place. So those were just fun. But the ones that came out in the 90s, the 90s with that crash, it really hit hard. And they were looking to do something to shake stuff up. And they were like, hey, do these crossovers. And so that's how we got them. So the fact that they're looking to do that again just it leads me to believe that, yeah, they're trying to shake some stuff up again, because otherwise they wouldn't be doing these crossovers. Because when Marvel and DC are both doing pretty well, they don't really look to do crossovers with each other. And crossovers only tend to work as long as the principals involved, the editors, can get along. Because the writers could be all for it, the artists could be all for it, everybody wants to do it, fans want to see it, and if the editors aren't getting on, it's not going to happen. So this, I think, might be a push from someplace else, because the climate right now isn't really hospitable to something like that, where you may need a shakeup, but crossovers, not necessarily. And the best stuff that we got were those original crossovers, and then maybe some stuff here and there with like the Amalgam universe, the JLA versus Avengers. But a lot of the crossovers that we got in the 90s tended to be throwaway stuff at the end of the day. And there were a bunch of them. It wasn't just Marvel and DC crossing over. It was, you had stuff like Spider-Man and Witchblade. Spider-Man, well, that was a later one, but it was crossovers all over the place. So anytime right now I'm thinking that, yeah, maybe they are just trying to do something to shake sales up. I don't see anything creatively that's been going on that would say like, oh yeah, this would be a cool time to get together and do some stuff.
What about you, PD? What's your take on this?
No, I tend to for the period that Cal mentioned, I definitely agree. I mean, doing the DC versus Marvel versus DC, that feel really was outside of some, was it Claudio Castellini art. It was really nothing to that thing in comparison to having, even though you had a lot of editorial scrutiny, the stories that came forth of, Superman versus Spider-Man, Batman versus Hulk, X Men Teen Titans, those type of titles were those were done in the frame of like doing a decent comic book, and it worked so well for DC. I think they were doing like, well, let's just do Superman versus Wonder Woman versus Captain Marvel, and then Marvel's like, well, wait a second, we can't do a Baxter, but we can do Superman versus Thor versus Hyperion. They did Superman versus Muhammad Ali. Marvel has the Thing versus the Champion, where they did their version of the Hun, basically Hunya from the character from that is stronger than all of the Marvel superheroes and challenges in the box. So it's like one of those things where you had these, well, on the DC side, when they were doing it together, you had these fun sort of crossovers. The editorial part, I also agree, because we had the original JLA Avengers, where the DC had started it. They were basically like, this is just going to be a fun thing for the fans. And Jim Shooter was kind of like, this plot is terrible. And we can't, I need to, you shouldn't have let George Perez start. And George Perez was like, "Oh, we work together. I would fix the plot." And then they sent him a new plot from Roy Thomas, and Roy Thomas was like, "I don't know what's going on. We sent it to him, and he hasn't approved it, and it's falling out of George Perez's schedule. So we're not sure what's going on." And Shooter mentioned, Paul Levitt. It took a while to approve something, and then he needed a deadline, it written as sort of a deadline. So it's like, is this sort of a payback from way back when we did the second Superman and Spider-Man? But we're not sure why it's taken Jim so long to approve it. So when you look at that art, it's just dazzling. So that sort of editorial, I think in the 2000s, after DC said we're putting a halt on it, then they said, wait a second, Perez, we'll do the JLA Avengers. We'll let that go through. But I think Ben just wanted to do Daredevil, Batman, and they said no. And he said, went to the fans and like, hey, this is something I really want to do, and you kind of hurting the fans. They're like, no, we need the editorial and in Marvel to change because Quesada, into bringing competition, was trying to throw shots at DC's, calling them when they were owned by AOL, they called them AOL Comics, and he said Marvel has to work and fight and scrap where they have their corporate backers to cover them. So it was like, so once their get back was saying, hey, we're not doing these crossovers. We're not sure what you're going to say in the press about us. So, but yeah, I mean, the hard part is I don't know the talent at too much of the talent now. So are we going to get a Pat Olive or Dan Mora doing the art on these things? Like who are the people that like they put, even look at here, you got a picture drawn by George Perez, which was like, yeah, I can see that. I don't know who the people are now. So obviously there's always new talent, a new great talent that could come around, but I don't know them. And we had people, that we could trust, right? So we got Kurt Busiek and George Perez on this. Jerry Conway, who was a DC and Marvel writer. Chris Claremont, who wasn't a DC writer, but he seemed to have a handle on the Titans when he did them. Ling Wen, who was both Batman and Hulk, even though people complained, how could Batman hitting the solar plexus? Like he's Hulk and Batman legendary, so what he says goes. But the art is also amazing. So yeah, Jose Luis, Garcia Lopez, yeah, that sort of art on it. Like you had Ross Andrew on the first one. Even the one before that, you had Marvel and DC. They worked together on the Wizard of Oz, where John Buscema drew it from memory. Like he literally drew the whole book from memory. So I don't know the talent. I'm pretty sure they'll put their top talent on these books, but it's just like it's not immediately like, yes, we're getting the JLA thing. So obviously, there's a misgiving. I can't predict the future, but at the same time, it's not the immediate jump to say, oh, the idea of, was it the Batman, Captain America, Byrne did, that sort of stuff, where it's like, oh yeah, that this stuff is fun, and that's what other thing is like, most to do it for fun outside of the Marvel versus DC, which didn't seem like fun, but to me the amalgams sound like fun. So, it's getting the fun and talents that you want. Just saying you're doing crossovers now, well, suppose something else out your sleeves. Tell us who's on it, so then we can really get excited.
I mean, I think that according to ComicsPro, what was happening in that meeting, and they decided to do the crossover by the editors in chief. I think it's Marie Javins and Cebulski. I think because of the success of, I believe, is because of the success of the crossovers, the omnibus, the crossover omnibus. I don't know about the amalgam. I haven't seen any sales on the amalgam, but I assume that was one of the ones that took a long time. They both took a long time to come out from when they first started talking about it. The fact,
just to jump in real quickly, one of the variant cover by Jim Lee is sold out, so I hope you got one.
I'm not sure which one I got. So I mean, but the amalgam, those sold, and I think it took a long time for them to work things out. And I think now that they've worked everything out, they're saying, hey, why don't we continue this, especially to bring something now more current in terms of superheroes, the properties that they have. And I think
that means they sold pretty well then.
Yeah, I think they sold pretty well. So that's, again, I know the omnibus sold well. I'm not sure about the amalgam, but
they tested the waters, and they're like, the water is nice and right for us to get in. We're jumping in.
Well, I mean, look, they saw what happened when
like Scrooge McDuck in his money bin. Money's fine.
Well, we saw what happened when we did the Heroes Initiative. We reprinted that after when with Perez, and then they did these crossovers. They printed the omnibus, and now they're like, hey, there's more for new stories. Let's make some money on this stuff. So I'm all for it, just as long as they keep it simple and enjoyable. That's the most important thing.
I don't see that happening.
Well, they're saying they're going to put it. I think they've worked through a lot of the issues they've had before, so I wouldn't doubt that they have stuff. They're just probably just like
Well,
Petey said, they're lining up the talent now, right?
okay,
No,
but
I
what's
don't
the
know the talent. I'm just saying. I hope
see?
I'm
it.
saying they're probably lining up the talent.
The problem is that Superman has already met Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Batman has already met the Hulk. Batman's already met Daredevil. So now it becomes all right. What's the impetus? The whole novelty of having these characters actually meet for the first time and adventure for the first time, that's out the window. And or rather, it's been done. So now you come over like, all right, well, they don't really exist in the same universe. So can we like pick up where they left off? Batman and Spider-Man have met twice. Daredevil and Spider-Man have met, rather Daredevil and Batman have met twice. Even I think even the Punisher has met Batman twice. Are we continuing on from there? Or do we see a revisit of the Amalgam universe where we can have some fun right there? Or is it going to turn into a big fight? Like, okay, we want to see these two guys fight, and that would be the lowest form of entertainment, and we would get exactly that. So that's where I'm at. If we're going to do this, what's the stories behind here? Are you going to have characters that are actually comparable, that complement each other, or are we just going to throw two popular people together and the heck with it?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're just talking about modern comics. That's what they're saying. That's what they're making the distinction now.
Yeah, but okay,
So
who are you going to have team up with Batman?
I don't know who's popular now.
Wolverine.
Have they ever
Wolverine.
met up before? Wolverine?
Don't think so.
So probably
Batman
could
and
be
Wolverine never met, but to be quite honest, for me, Batman and Wolverine have nothing in common to adventure about.
We're just talking the popularity.
yes,
That's the
popularity.
thing. That's what I don't want. I don't want, okay, he's hot, he's hot. Let's put the two of them together. I would like to see characters that actually complement each other to get together and go on an adventure, as opposed to, hey, let's put these two guys together. Oh, let's have them fight for a little bit. Like, I mean, did you read that What If where Conan met Wolverine?
No.
It's a while ago. Yeah.
This was What If Volume 2. And then there was one where Conan meets Wolverine. And that story cheesed me off to no small to no small to no small degree because they had to have them fight. And so of course I was just like, well, Conan should take this fight at the end of the day. All things considered, he's a better fighter than Wolverine. Conan fights demons with just a sword, so he should take it. And that's what happened. But then they threw in the cheat where, oh, Wolverine regenerates from everything. So he came back, ended up cutting Conan's hand off, and Conan dies at the end of the thing. So I'm ready to burn the comic at the end of the day. And it had to be that way because Wolverine, without a doubt, is the more popular of the two characters. Now, mind you, there had been a meetup with Conan and Thor previous to this. And even though, even though Conan, Thor, I'm not sure who might have been the more popular at the time, it was quickly established that, Conan was not going to be a match for Thor. We get that out of the way. We go on, we have an adventure. That's pretty much what I want to see between the characters and characters that actually can complement each other to some sort of extent. So if we're doing that, I think you'll be very successful. If it's just, hey, this guy's hot, we should have Batman team up with Deadpool. Why in the world would these two people ever do anything together? Okay, it doesn't make a lot. It doesn't make a lot of
Abbott and
sense.
Costello, the straight man in the comedy, the funny man, right? I mean, you've had Deadpool in so many titles: Deadpool and Black Panther, Deadpool and Wolverine,
No,
Deadpool and
we don't want
so
no
I mean,
Deadpool.
so
Just
it could be a Deadpool. You never
Batman.
know. They've had so many different titles. You know,
Batman is not a straight man, though.
I think he is in that context.
No, anybody, if that's the context, everybody's a straight man with Deadpool.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm
Okay,
just
so
saying that's what they could
and then
do.
the whole idea is you want Batman to be there for the qualities of that character, not because he can play off anybody can play off Deadpool. All you have to do is look at this dude like the nut job he is. That's not very hard.
Yeah, but I get what you're saying, but they're saying they want to give it to a modern sensibility, right? So most of the people who saw the original crossovers. Those are what, 20 years ago now? Those came out.
20
Those were
years, maybe more.
probably more. So now they're saying they want to focus more. There's a new audience, a younger audience that they really want to capture with characters that may have not have been around at the time, or characters who now have whose stories are now significant that they want to change it up. And yes, it's going to be a popularity contest naturally, but was X-23 around? No. So probably they may want to pair that. Probably they may want to pair Magic with I
Who?
don't know, Zatanna. Who knows? They haven't been paired before. Probably
So
they want to pair.
Magic
So
with Zatanna. So we just what we're gonna call the crossover? Hot chicks?
well, I mean, isn't that what Power Girl was? Right? Power Girls was hot chicks all the
All right, no,
time,
no, no. If you have Power Girl, okay, and
and they cancel that.
there is some qualities to Power Girl that I think do work story wise. Who would you pair her up from the Marvel universe?
I have
If
no
you just
idea.
want to,
I never read the Power Girl. I never read Power Girl, so it's hard for me
if you
to.
just want to do hot chicks, if you just want to do hot chicks, you can always pair her up with any hot chick. But if you want to pair her up with a hot chick and someone that she actually I think the storyline would be complementary. You should pair her up with Carol Danvers. I think that would be a really good. I think you could get a really good story out of that. They have some qualities that definitely overlap. Okay, you can definitely get the hotness out of them, but you can also get a pretty good story. That's what I'm talking about. Don't just put together two characters who are popular. Put together two characters who are popular and complement each other. You'll get a stronger story.
I
We
would
have
always say,
100% faith in Marvel and DC, and that's not because we have resumes with them.
why do you
100%
say when
confidence.
you're doing a regular show and then you throw that in there? Ultimately, one of the things that worked for the early ones is one of the things that having two characters that on the other side you can have which have subtle similarities. It could, I guess the bus line for Power Girl would be a little bigger than Captain Marvel, but at the same time, like one of the things is having the mix, but then you also have to say what would be a good mix. Like the idea of having Superman and Spider-Man, where you have the similarities as far as their workplace and as far as their characters, they are, totally different as how they handle different things and react. So that's where you get a lot of your story. But then you say, what would be a good matchup that we haven't seen to go in there and be like, oh, we're going to do Superman and Iron Man, right? And then we're going to try to figure a way for the two of them and then have their similarities be similar to Batman and what's the name, because he's a playboy or something like that. But you can also have fun with it. You can have them be very close, and just to say what people look at and say when they were looking at the what's that thing, the JLA Avengers, where they were sometimes trying to match them up character for character, having Hawkeye and then Green Arrow kind of lined up against each other in the covers, not really necessarily in the story. So you can also have like some of the differences, but not going as far as Deadpool, because it's too. There's no, you have a mercenary, and then Batman's with him for 2 seconds, and he kills somebody, and Batman has to electroshock him and say, "Well, I'm just wrapping you up and throwing you in Arkham," and that's the end of the story. You can't have Batman's not going to figure how long he's going to be with this mercenary. It's not going to work, or else you have to do the movie version where he's trying to do right and Batman is saying, "No, you did wrong." He's not going to deal with all the killing and then not stop him at some point. So.
Or then you get more of like Batman and the Punisher, where that story could only go so far because the Punisher has no qualms killing anyone, and Batman's going to stop him. But the other problem is that the Punisher does not have the skill level of Batman. So, you know, Batman starts fighting him, he's gonna lose. That's pretty much the end of it. So that dynamic can only go, but so far, and that's not what you want. You do want people who complement each other. Now, if you want to do something like I don't know, like the Punisher and Deathstroke, you might get something out of that. But the Punisher, and the Punisher and Batman for me was I was like, this can only go but so far. And then the Punisher has in terms of fighting skills, if the Punisher's fighting like a mobster or one of these guys, that's not a big deal. He's got it all over them. The second you get with anybody like Daredevil, Iron Fist, he's totally outclassed. Totally. I remember, did you read that Punisher versus Bullseye limited series?
No.
No.
Oh my goodness. I don't know. Garth Ennis is like, I don't know what he was thinking with that one, because pretty much from the first issue, Bullseye is difficult for somebody with superpowers. And he was fighting the Punisher, and he was just literally like smacking the Punisher around for 4.5 issues. I was just like, man, that was like, I did not, I was like, why is he here? He's like, he's gonna pull out some win in the last issue, but you had to read 4.5 issues of the Punisher nearly getting killed, by Bullseye. It was just ridiculous. So you don't want that. You do want characters to complement each other.
That's similar to like most of his stuff. The Vikings, the Thor Viking, and then I think well his other thing was that the heroes were totally inept in his Punisher series, like Spider-Man being used as a blockade the entire time, and then Daredevil one, which I was talking with a friend of mine. He was so enamored with it. He's like, "Oh yeah, Daredevil's trapped, and he had to get to the gun, and then he got to the gun, and then the gun doesn't shoot, and he's like feels all weird." I was like, "No," he's like, "I was like, it already happened," and my friend was like, well, "What did Daredevil do?" I said, "He shot the Punisher." He don't have no qualms, especially at that time when Electra died. He'd already been through so much, so it was like he's not playing those morality games with the Punisher, you know. But anyway, but I think the thing is, at some point, it also is going to run out of steam because you have the crossovers, the versus crossovers that were going on in the '90s, and at some point around Batman Punisher, that's when the audience was like, "All right, we've had it." So you got a limited time on this. Even though they came back, and of course you have the JLA Avengers, which was very successful, they kind of realized that it was running out of steam. So, definitely fan related, that brought everyone back to it, but it was dying out during that time. So.
Okay. Well, hey, one last thing. I don't know if you
What,
guys.
the Spider Girl, they canceled some comic books, and now there's a Spider Girl comic book coming out. You see this down here?
No, wait, hold on.
Hold on, I'm going to bring it up. I think if I click on it, it should work. Oh, look. I'm right back. Well, you cancel some titles, and then you get the what's that girl? Moon Girl in the Spider-Man costume.
Is that Moon Girl?
I don't know who it is, but it's too similar for me. The hard part is, but they're bringing out another comic book. So Marvel's doing their old school thing of cancel 2 titles, put another title out. So.
No.
2 for 1, baby.
Well, again, in Comics Pro, they another thing that came up, and